Hello. Right, this is gonna be fun. How many of you here are designers? Almost everyone. I really hope you don't lynch me after this, really hoping. Right, let's start. Hi, I am Yolanda. I'm the Director of Service and Platform Design at Farfetch. We are a luxury platform for retailers. I've been designing back office systems and tools for a very, very, very long time. It's been more than 10 years that I have been designing for platforms. I started very ignorantly, let's say, not knowing very well what I was doing for a content distribution platform called Reister. Then it was just a matter of we need to do something for a very complex system for a lot of people. And I didn't really know how work it out, and I just started working one step at a time. But over the years, I'm working for companies like Canonical, being the platform design head for Ubuntu operating system, and working with open source operating systems and how they work as ecosystems and platforms. Then I did work for Hearst magazines. I built during the 2.5 years that I was there the content management system and distribution of content system for the whole of Hearst magazines. And it has been used as well for Hearst News and Hearst Television after that. Also worked for Open Bank project for Banco Santander during about a year time, just doing the same, trying to get the platform for banking sorted for their digital banking products. And now just working for Farfetch, which started as a marketplace. It started just as a marketplace for luxury boutiques and retailers. And over the last 3 years, is going really fast towards first becoming a platform and now becoming an ecosystem. But the thing is that during all this time, one thing I have learned, working with platforms and ecosystems, and is, if I can do it, the user-centered design is obsolete. I know that all of you are firm believers of user-centered design, and so am I. But it's just not enough. It's just not enough. We cannot continue designing just for the end user. We have to start looking a lot more into the effects of our products, the effects of our design. We have to look at the non-users of our products, but get impacted by them, at the support staff, the customer service teams, but also at the whole ecosystem where your product lives. We have a responsibility as designers to do so. There has been a tremendous change in the world. You have all noticed it. It's great. We cannot continue having the selfish decisions that we have been making until now. We have to look at the world as a complete entity. We cannot just be basing all of our design in the individualistic socio-political agenda that we have had for the last 50 years. Everything we do has an impact on the environment, on the psyche of everyone, on the socioeconomic models. We need to be a lot more conscious of where our products and services live and what impact they have. Truth is, during the last 30 years, we as designers have all been indoctrinated in user-centered design. Focus on the user, design for the user. Look at the smallest slide possible and focus on it. Focus on the MVP, focus on the feature, focus on the wireframe, focus on the screen. Just that one thing, and let's ship it fast. Do not look too much around. Let's just focus on that thing that we need to do to get the product out. But that's a very myopic point of view, right? It gives us great focus to develop that product faster. But that user-centered design has limitations. It has great strengths. when we actually have to focus on a point. But it has huge limitations when we need to be looking at much bigger systems. Especially when we have to look at problems like this. I believe, and I think it's been great, as I have been so many years in this profession, I have seen the evolution of designers and product design. 30 years ago, the profession almost didn't exist. And we have gone evolving and designing incredible products and services, digital and analog, all around the world, that have had incredible success. And it has given us this increased power, let's say. Now designers sit at the table on boards. We have chief experience officers and chief design officers. We have a lot more voice at a higher level. However, I don't think that as designers we have ever tried to use our processes or products or methodologies to try to solve the really systematic problems that we have in the world now. And I know that it really looks big, but the truth is, do you really think that your products are not actually making these things worse? Have you ever thought about it? Has anybody in big companies thought about the huge impact that products have? We have all seen what social media is doing to teenagers' mindsets, right? I have a couple of examples. Uber and Lyft. Fantastic design teams, fantastic design methodologies, we all read their blogs, great products, amazing service. They solve a very user-centered design problem, right? A user problem. We all wanted to get cars fast. They were going to solve the car sharing problem. If everybody took a car and we shared it, then there will be less traffic. We will ditch our own cars and start sharing rides with other people. Therefore, the traffic will reduce. And it will be fantastic. So it was kind of killing two birds, one stone. Not what happened, actually. Car sharing apps have created a worse problem that we had before. It was completely unexpected result. The fact that the traffic has got worse, and public transport, which is so important to reduce carbon emissions, is being ditched. Because it is so easy, right? You usually ride a bicycle to go to work every morning. It's raining a little bit, and how easy it is to go, I'm just going to call an Uber or a Lyft. Nobody really shares the Ubers. How many of you actually here share Ubers? A few hands. Not really. It was created to be sharing cars, but nobody does it. It's created such a big problem that transport organizations are starting to put rules and trying to govern around it. Because it has increased the CO2, it has increased the traffic, it has made the non-users and the users of Uber's lives in the city center worse. So now governments and officials are trying to regulate around it. They are trying to think of laws to make cars used for car sharing into electrical cars, to at least reduce the carbon emissions. So from trying to solve a user problem to creating a massive ecosystem one, right? That's not the only one. This is one of my favorites. Coffee pods. Who doesn't love them, right? Who doesn't use them every day? How many of you use Nespresso or whatever, Gusto, coffee pods? Oh, that's actually quite few. Not so many people. I expected a lot more. I've done similar talk a few months back, and it was at least half of the room. I'm glad to see that not so many people. However, the use of coffee pods increases almost 50% year on year. Is tons and tons of coffee consumed like this. It was a user problem that we were trying to solve with this. It was, let's make the life of the user convenient, not having to wash coffee machines, serving the right amount of coffee at the right temperature, so quick and convenient. All the different flavors that you can ever think of. If you're having a party, you can have everybody actually using different pots for different flavors. Great, isn't it? Well, it has created such a huge environmental problem. These pots are not easily recyclable. And these ones that you see in the picture are the aluminum ones of Nespresso. Even these ones, because of the glues and the aluminum cap on top of them, they can only be recycled in their own Nespresso facilities. But there are tons of them made of plastic. And the fact that we were trying to solve a user problem just created a huge amount of garbage that now we have to deal with, while actually making yourself a coffee from a coffee bag and a coffee machine produce zero garbage. So again, the problem is big, and the government and institutions and organizations are trying to curb it. The city of Hamburg is forbidden in the public buildings to use coffee pot machines. And it's not the only one. Many more cities are starting to, in public spaces, to forbid the use of coffee pots coffee. There are a lot of more examples, and I can, if you approach me later, I can tell you a million of them. Actually, one of my favorite ones, or one of the ones that creates me more anxiety, is app design. And I bet a lot of you here are app designers. I have an OralB toothbrush, and it came and is connected through Bluetooth to my phone. And my phone tells me for how many minutes I have to brush my teeth. That gave me, I tried to use it and I thought it was fun, right? And it gave a terrible amount of anxiety in the mornings, because if I didn't have time to do the 2.5 minutes that the toothbrush thing, I was feeling bad for the rest of the morning. So trying to solve exactly what user problem, who doesn't know how long do you need to brush your teeth for? Do we really need to create an app to tell me for how long do I need to brush my teeth? Not really. And it created me, I don't know, anybody else, maybe I'm weird, anxiety. But Instagram is creating anxiety on teenagers. Facebook is allowing for bullying and bigotry and political discourse of negative kind to happen, and so on and so forth. So a lot of apps and designs trying to solve something kind of temporary and user-centric. It's creating a lot of issues. But I don't want to depress you. And there is a solution to this problem. What can we do? What can we all do? We can look at the big picture. It's a lot more simple than you think, right? Because user-centered design is myopic. It looks really at the issue from one point of view in one moment in time. What we can do is actually take a step back and look at the picture from a much higher perspective and start working for interconnectedness. Because I can always have difficulty to pronounce the word and define it. This is my favorite definition. I don't have many in the presentation, so don't worry. Interconnectedness is about reduction of friction between interactions and large-scale systems. This helps us move beyond the concept of a user and embrace the concept of relationships and interactions between peers and their ecosystem as the key element of a business. Basically, what he's saying is, don't look just at the user. Look at the relationship in between all the users in your platform. Look for that place in between where the value gets created, where the transactions happen, and what happens in between the people doing those transactions and everybody else within the ecosystem. I could go on and on about designing for interconnectedness and platform design, but the best way of learning more about this is just going to that side. It's open source, and you can get all the information, the tools and the templates that you need. That's how I learn, and those are the tools that I use to practice ecosystem design. So knock yourselves and collaborate. It's a collaborative platform, by the way. Okay, so how do we practice ecosystem design at Farfetch? First, a little bit about Farfetch. How many of you know what Farfetch is? Not so many people, so I'll explain. Right, Farfetch is a platform to help boutiques and brands in the luxury space to do e-commerce. Sounds simple, right? We're just like an Amazon for luxury brands. We provide the tools and the services that allows all of these companies to do their everyday retail services, the retail business. And how are we actually working as in Farfetch as an ecosystem? It just works like in every ecosystem. I was hearing the talks yesterday and being very, very inspiring by Alan and others when I heard, that there have been so many talks these days about ecosystems and platforms. And something that Alan said yesterday about us all being gardeners. Gardens are one of my favorite metaphors for ecosystems, right? And it's true, we are gardeners. But at Farfetch, we use the city metaphor for explaining ecosystems, right? So the infrastructure of the platform is like the urbanistic design of any city, right? It has the technology and the services that connects everything together. But if you look at the city, it will be the plumbing, the electricity, the road design, the lighting, and so on. It's where you put the next layer on top, where you put the businesses. In this case, the websites and applications and that the participants use to create and consume value. Is everything that you put on top of that infrastructure. It can be anything. It can be tools for logistics, or production, or product management, or a million things, translation services, every type, and every type of businesses, small boutiques, big boutiques, multi-branded boutiques, brands themselves, small startups, games, tons and tons of different businesses that exchange value in between them every day. None of that will work if it was not because of the community. Everyone operating within the ecosystem is what makes the city move, right? No ecosystem will work with just two or one element of this. Ecosystems work because there is an infrastructure, there is something that supports the businesses and the services that people uses. Having services and people with no infrastructure wouldn't succeed. Having businesses and infrastructure with no people wouldn't succeed. So looking exclusively at the users without looking at the impact and the interactions in between the elements, all the elements of this, it's just not gonna work. At Farfetch, we have different levels, but this is how every platform and every ecosystem works. And I'm sure you're already working out in your heads your own businesses, how they fit this type of model, right? You're starting to see the layers of your company. In our case, there is a business ecosystem where we put everything, right? All the different elements are there to create value for everyone. And that's the business ecosystem. Then we have the marketplace platform, but that's not the only platform Farfetch has. We have a data platform. We have a logistic platform. We have a production platform where we take the pictures of every product that we display on our websites. So there are many platforms in that ecosystem. We also have, the next layer is multi-channel service, or actually multi-channel services. We have tons of them. Anything from supply chain tools to the WeChat app. So we go from the back office kind of supply tools to the consumer app, in this case, China WeChat. But we have a Discover app on Android and iOS, and we have websites, and we have tons and tons of services on that layer. And then we have the single touch point, where our users interact with those layers. And everything goes from generic to the user, But there you can see how that end touch point has interactions and interconnectedness with all the other layers above. And here is where actually it was one of the most difficult things to explain at Farfetch when I started. And when I talked with my team then, which was relatively small, and I told them, actually, I want you to forget about personas. We're not going to do personas ever again. We're not going to think like that until we figure out who are the entities and actors of our ecosystem. There was a generic gasp, because of course that's what we have learned, right? You do user-centered design, therefore you do personas. However, when you're working with huge ecosystems and big platforms, you cannot singularize so much into a persona, because it makes the model impossible. What we use is actors or entities. And these ones are the entities of the Farfetch platform. But pretty much they fit any platform or any ecosystem. We have producers, consumers, aggregators, and governors. And this happens, I mean, I have studied and we have modeled many platforms on this. And it's just the same over and over and over. In our case, in the producer side, we have merchants, supply luxury products, and service providers that supply services to the participants. Consumers, we have the ones that purchase products and services, not only products, but also services. So our back office consumers are consumers too. In aggregators, we have the application owners, the ones that connect the supply with the demand. Again, working with the interconnectedness, with the glue. And the most important part of any platform ecosystem is the governors. We have at the end the stakeholders, the ones that input into the platform strategy. We all know very well about the stakeholders. In case of big ecosystems, can also be a part of your business partners and so on, can be governments and legislators. For the case that I was saying before about actually governments and organizations trying to regulate ecosystems. But the most important part of any ecosystem is the shapers. Every one of you in this room are shapers of your ecosystem. Designers, product owners, product managers, engineers, architects, everyone in the company shapes the ecosystem equally. As you can see, there is no hierarchy in these actors of the ecosystem. Everyone is at the same level. Everyone influences at the same level. No one is more important than the other. And that's how ecosystems work. If you drop any of them, if any of them doesn't become an active participant of the ecosystem, it just dies or doesn't succeed. Because designing platform ecosystems is quite a strategic job, it's not that everything we do in Farfetch is designing ecosystems, right? What we use to practice ecosystem design at company level is service design. So this is how kind of the hierarchy of working with platforms looks like for us. We have the whole platform ecosystem surrounded everything that we do. But then we work as service designers, and I have several in the team, service designers, work at the service level, looking at things like acquiring partners or onboarding or managed catalog and so on. And then, of course, we have UX teams and visual design teams that work at how those services get manifested on the user experience points. In the case of acquiring partners, it can be marketing or business development. Or in the case of onboarding partners, as tools or as documentation, and so on and so forth, logistic, data, application support. We never look at it just from the tool point of view or their end interface point of view. We look at it as well as how we can provide that experience from every service point of view. And as I was saying, service design is what we use to drive that operational change. Because implementing and bringing platform thinking to Farfetch and to any organization is really hard. It's not an easy thing to do. You don't always get a stakeholder approval or board approval to do this. I was lucky in the case of Farfetch because they knew they were a platform and they wanted to bring this discipline to the company. But still, the difference in between wanting to bring this discipline and actually bringing it every day is not that easy. So what we're doing at Farfetch is use service design to work as that intermediate point to bring platform design to a lower level and make it a lot easier to practice. Both disciplines are very much interlinked. But that's the way we kind of differentiate the user experience, the user design, with the rest of the platform design by applying service design. Now, designing for ecosystems, main goal, apart of reducing transactional cost, which is the main business goal of any ecosystem, is making sure that that interconnectedness, that value exchange happens at the minimum cost possible. But that cost is not always just about monetary cost. It can be friction for the users, or it can be footprint. So at Farfetch, we have a mandate to try to reduce as much as possible the footprint of all the transactions that we do. But that can be reduced to designing ecosystems is about simplifying the complex. It's just making really complex systems into easy models. I'm going to show you now how Farfetch looked before we started to work on ecosystem design. So we have boutiques. We have tools that allow us to do business with the boutique, and companies that support or logistics, payments, ticketing services, customer service, and so on. We have big, we call these tenants, so it's companies that do the business through us but not participate in the marketplace. We also have companies like a Store of the Future business units within Farfetch that create their own businesses. In the case of a Store of the Future, it's our IoT branch, is what brings online and offline in the same bucket. And we also have a whole bunch of startups and third-party companies that provides apps and services for us. So this is actually a year ago. Now it's probably twice the size of this because we have a lot more businesses and things. We have acquired a couple of big companies. This is how it looked like. And trying to work the relationship and the value exchange in between all of these things looking like this was pretty much impossible, really. I mean, it took a lot of time and a lot of effort to reduce it to this. It was months. This is probably version 23 of this diagram. At the beginning, it was circles and things all over the page. It took a long time and a lot of effort of applying things like value exchange profiles and entity profiles and ecosystemic design to ended up in this, which is basically, as you can see here, the actors, the services, the API, shapers and stakeholders, and how they relate to each other. This diagram, together with the whole concept of platform and platform ecosystems, a team of 10 people, not only from my team, but from product management, architecture, engineering, and so on, we took it in something that we call last year the Platform Roadshow. Because not everyone in the company knew that we were a platform or how to become platform shapers. So we did a massive educational piece, and we took this diagram together with booklets and information and that metaphor of the city to everyone in the company. So about 3,000 people got educated into platforms. Everyone in Farfetch knows what's the part they play in the ecosystem. They understand how their jobs impact every layer of that luxury retailers' ecosystems. And that was extremely important because as a design team, we were banging against walls constantly because the teams didn't understand what we were trying to do, why we were looking so far away. If we were about to design a feature, why did we want to look at the whole service? Why we wanted to look where the service was living? Why entities? Why are you doing all of this? Once we did this educational piece, and we took it to everyone, from marketing teams to localization teams to everyone, absolutely everyone, those barriers kind of dissipated. Everybody understood what role they were playing, and everything became so much easier. I mean, we haven't won, believe me. We still have a lot of education to do, and it's not an easy ride. But we're doing a lot of leaps and bounds compared to last year. And just one last way of how we practice it. In practice, it means that we have we divide our team, the platform team, into 3 areas: the strategy, the services, and the touch points. We still practice user-centered design at that level. We do. So it is still useful. I was not trying to say, forget about your user-centered design practices. Of course, we have to still look at the user. But not only. You can not only focus on the one user at one time. Always have to try to look beyond. So these are my summary points. Please look beyond the user. Even if your mandate is to design one screen or one feature, try to understand where that is coming from. What is the interconnectedness that is happening? What's the value exchange? Where that value exchange is happening? Think of the long-term impact of your design. This is very important. We are responsible of the designs we make, right? What if you were asked to design the atomic bomb? Would you do it if you knew what was going to happen with it? Try to think what impact is going to have your design in every level. And always try to reduce the friction, but not only the user friction, environmental friction, the socioeconomic friction, the psychological friction. Be responsible. Thank you very much.